Good morning, everybody. Department of Computer Engineering and Information Technology. Subject Software Testing. Semester 5th. Subject code 22518. Myself, Miss Anita Shirture. Chapter 2nd. The types and levels of operating system. In the previous video, we learn about the levels of testing. Then, how many levels of testing there are? Unit testing, integration testing, acceptance testing, and the system testing. Learning outcome of this video: integration testing, top down, bottom up, and third, the bidirectional approaches. Chapter 2nd, types and levels of testing. This chapter is given for the 18 marks. Now, in previous video, we discuss about the levels of testing, the unit testing. Then unit testing maybe include the code files, classes, methods, and which can be tested individually for correctness. Student, think about that and listen carefully. The unit testing is used for the separating the checking your system, testing your systems modules in one by one. Then the testings may include the code files, classes, methods, and which can be tested individually. All these functions are testings in the individually for the correctness. The primary goal of the unit testings is to take the smallest piece of the testable software in the application, isolate it, that means analysis that, and then from the remainders of the code, and determine whether it behaves exactly as you expect, exactly as your expectation, as well as your given the outputs and the customer's requirements. And so the unit testings, each unit is tested separately before the integrating, that means join together, then them into the models, and they test the interfaces between the models. And after the unit testing, you have to testing of the integration testing, because the integration testing is a process by which components are aggregate to create the larger components. This testing is used for testing of the two modules, and these whenever two modules are merged together, and that times you have to test of this integration testing. And the testing the data flow or the interface between the two features is known as the integration testing. The testing that occurs at the lowest levels is called as the unit or module testings. Okay, then integration testings may start a module level where the different units and components come together to form a module, and so up to a system level. If the code is built and tested in pieces, it will work properly and gradually. When you put together into groups or link the units together and tested the whole group, and if it won't work, then what will happen? Then integration testing is process by which components are aggregate to create the larger components. Integration testings with a system slave. The integration testings mainly focus on the input-output protocols, parameters, passing between the different units, modules, and all. Figure shows the different modules are here. The module A, module B, module C, module D1, D2, and module E. Then module A is divided into two modules, the module B and module C, as well as again module B is divided into two parts, the module D1 and module D2. Then module C is divided into one part, is the module E. The process of the incremental testing continues, putting together come and more pieces of the software. Like this, we can create the pieces of this modules A. Modules A is divided into two pieces, the module B and the module C is there. Until the entire procedure, at least a major portions of it is tested at once in process is called the system testing. With this testing strategy, it is much easier to isolate bugs when a problem is found at the unit level. The problem must be in that unit. A bug is found when the multiple units are integrated. It must be related to how the modules interact. And then, of course, there are the exceptions to this, but by and large, testing and debugging is much more efficient than the testings. Before the integration testings, you have to complete the unit testing. Once the unit testing is complete, integration testing is begins. Then the integration testing, the units validate. During the unit testings are combined to form a subsystem. I have already told about that unit testings. Whenever you have to complete the unit test, that times you have to begin the integration testings, and that in unit testings, the separately testings are there. Separately testings performs are there, and then integration testings is the merge or comes together the modules and then test on that modules. Then the unit testing, that integration testing, the units validates during the unit testing are combined to form a subsystem. Figure shows the working of the integration testing. These are the multiple unit testing, that means the multiple components are there, and then these are the performing by the integration testing. Then the integration testing is aimed at the ensuring that all the modules. Now advantages of the integration testing. First, the unit modules may not be tested as per the changes to the requirements, which will lead to error page when integration testing is done. Second advantage is it is easy to fix the error in the integration testing when compared. Then next is the top-down integration testing. Then what is top-down integration testing? It is an integration testing techniques used in order to simulate the behavior of the low-level modules that are not yet integrated. Stubs are the modules that act as a temporary replacement for a called module. We have already discussed about the stubs and the drivers. Stubs is the called modules and drivers is the calling modules. The stubs are the modules that act as a temporary replacement for a called module and give the same output as that of the actual product. The replacement for the called modules is known as the stubs and also used when the software needs to interact with an external system. The top-down integration, the top level of the applications is tested first. Then it goes to the downward and it reaches the final component of the system. Here the first steps is the one module. One module is divided into two parts, the 2 and 3, and again 2 is divided into stub 1, stub 2. And first part is that application first level is tested and then goes down and then goes to the second module. The second module is the 2 and 3 and reaches the final component of the system is the stub 1. Then stub 1 is the called modules. Advantages of top-down integration testing. First advantage is if major flaws occur toward the top of the program. Whenever they find out the major problems on the top of the program, that this is the advantages of the top-down integration testing. The second is the once the input-output functions are added, representations of test cases is easier. Whenever you are testing the top down integration testing, that times you have to edit the input output functions, and then the test case, then after that you are represent the test cases is easier than the without input output function. Third is the early skeletal programs allow the demonstration and boost the morale. Disadvantages of the top down integration testing is the stub modules must be produced. Thirdly, the stub modules are often more complicated than they first appear to be. In previous slide, we have shown the stub modules are. Next thing, the bottom up integration testing. This technique is opposite of the top down integration testing. In top down integrations, we had to testing from the top of the programs, and in this bottom up testings, obviously we have to opposite of the top downs, and in this approach testings is conducted from the sub module to main module. Then if the main module is not developed, a temporary programs called drivers is used to simulate the main modules. In the top down integration testings, the stubs are included there, and bottom up integration the drivers are included there. Okay, then in a bottom up testing with each components at a lower hierarchy is tested individually, and then the components that they really upon this the components are tested. Figure show the bottom up integration flow of diagrams are there. The orders of the integrations by bottom down approach will be. For the problem is one of the models, and then the test one such that it calls 3, and if an error occurs, we know that the problems is in 3 or in the interface between the 1 and 3. The advantages of a bottom up integration testing. The test conditions are easier to create. This is the first advantages of the bottom up integration testing. Second, the observation of test results is easier. Third, driver modules must be produced. And fourth, the program as an entity does not exist until the last module is added. And number 5 is advantages if the major flaws cause toward the bottom of the programs. These advantages is actually opposite of the bottom up integration testing. The second is the disadvantages. Next, the bidirectional integration is the combinations of the top down and the bottom up integration approaches used together to derive the integration steps. In this bidirectional integration, it is the combination of the top down and the bottom up. So, figure show the component 1, component 6, 7, 8, then 2, 3, 4, 5. Assume that the software components becomes available in the order mentioned by the components number. The individual components 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are tested. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tested separately, and bidirectional integration performs initially with the use of stubs and driver. Here components is the module. Then the drivers are used to provide the upstream connectivity, while the stubs provide the downstream connectivity. I have already told about the driver. A driver is a function which redirects the request to some other components, and stubs simulate the behavior of a missing components. After the functionality of this integrated component is tested, the drivers and stubs are discarded. Advantages and disadvantages of the integration. Bidirectional integration. Sandwich. The sandwich approaches is useful for very large projects having the several sub-projects. Secondly, the both top-down and bottom-up approach start at a time as per the development schedule. Units are tested and brought together to make a system. Integration is done the downwards. And in this integration, both the top-down and bottom approaches start at a times as per the development schedule. This approach is useful for very large projects having the several sub-projects when development follows a spiral model and the models and modules itself it as a large as a system. Disadvantages of this bidirectional, it cannot be used for smaller. Question number 1. What is the objective of the integration testing? Option A. To verify that the system is functioning according to specified requirements. Second, to verify that the system meets user expectations and needs. Third, to verify that system separately testable modules are functioning properly. And D, to verify that interfaces between the different parts of system. Some MCQs regarding this topic. First is, a large scale system integration test may come after the acceptance of a system. True or false? A option true, B is false. Answer is true. Question number 2. Who is the responsible for the integration testing? First is the developer. Second, software tester. C, specialist integration tester. Third, fourth is. Then next is the top